Well, hello there, viewers, and welcome to Revelation TV. You are watching Get Well, Stay Well with myself, Cyrus Fernando, and as always, delighted to be joined by Felicity. How are you?
Hi there, Cyrus. I'm fine and feeling very calm. We're going to be talking about panic attacks today. Panic attacks and depression, and how to get rid of them with good nutrition and getting well and staying well. I have my panic attacks usually when traveling, when I'm looking for my passport, which I know is in my bag, but can I put my hand right on it at that moment? The tickets as well, I have to double check that the tickets are there. That's the kind of thing that we all have little panic attacks, don't we?
So I think we all have something in a way that has that little trigger to get us in a small panic attack, and I think it'll be a very, very valuable show today for our viewers, because either our viewers are suffering from panic attacks or depression, or their family members or friends are suffering, so it'll be very informative.
Absolutely, and we've got such an interesting guy who's going to be talking about it. We've got Dr. McCullough, and we've got Dr. Andrew Saul, he's the doctor who teaches the doctors, actually. He's a professor, written some wonderful books, lots of books. And he's had tremendous success with all this stuff. And I think that, you know, a lot of the letters that I get, about a third of the letters, are really people who've got depression, feeling low, and they really need to find a way out of it. And I'm having the most amazing testimonies from viewers who've now been on the juicing now for several months, and one of them for a couple of years, lost 3 stone in weight, is now feeling absolutely fine and overcome the depression. Also someone who overcame bipolar, someone who overcame schizophrenia. I mean, it's amazing, because they've been put on a lot of chemical drugs, and as always we say, check with your doctor. You've got to be monitored by your own doctor who knows your case, because I'm a health educator, I'm a general health educator. But it's amazing how when people make their nutrition much healthier, they come back to God's Genesis 1:29 and 30 diet, and their mood lightens.
And I can say that from my personal experience as well, Felicity. Since doing the programs with you, I've changed my nutrition and what I'm eating and what the foods I'm cutting out. And I have to say, when you're eating healthy, you do feel great, and your mind feels positive, and you have a lot of energy with you. And it's just important to reiterate to our viewers the importance of eating the right nutrition and how much that affects your mind.
Absolutely, and taking a bit of exercise as well. You know, it's putting the whole thing together, isn't it? Nutrition and exercise and drinking enough water, that's really important.
Because we always say, we always talk on our program, it's about the lifestyle change. It's not only eating the right foods or only exercise. It's got a number of other elements included, such as sleep as well, and drinking lots of water. But today's program is panic attacks and depression. So let's take a look at our first clip that we have today. This is by Dr. McCullough, and he's interviewing Dr. Saul, and they're talking about niacin. Let's take a look.
Welcome everyone, this is Dr. McCullough, and today I'm here with Dr. Andrew Saul, who we've had the pleasure of interviewing before. He has over 35 years experience in natural health education, and is currently serving as editor-in-chief of the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service. He's authored over 175 publications and 11 books, and he's been named one of 7 natural health pioneers by Psychology Today, and is featured in the movie Food Matters, which I'm sure many of you have seen. Today we're going to be exploring the topic of niacin. It is an interesting one because, it's a natural product, obviously. It's a vitamin supplement, so as a result, it's relatively inexpensive and has relatively few side effects, and certainly no lethal ones as far as we know, which is not be said, of course, for many of the drug approaches to our healthcare problems.
When we look into vitamin safety, we find out, according to the American Association of Poison Control Centers, who collect data every year from 59 poison control centers coast to coast, that there have been 11 alleged deaths in the last 28 years. However, none of them have been documented. There hasn't been a death from a vitamin, including niacin, in 28 years. Dr. Hoffer is probably the world authority on therapeutic use of niacin. He started doing tests and studies and research into niacin back in the early 1950s. And by 1954, Abram Hoffer had performed the first double-blind, placebo-controlled nutrition studies in the history of psychiatry. Now, the early 50s were an odd time. Drugs were on the move, more were coming along, but they hadn't developed to the point where they are today, to put it mildly. Dr. Hoffer looked at psychiatric problems as a biochemic problem, and he tried using niacin simply because they didn't have anything that really worked for schizophrenia, and high doses of niacin worked. Now, Dr. Hoffer had a PhD in biochemistry, and he specialized in cereal biochemistry, which means the study of the vitamins and nutrients in grains. He was also a medical doctor. He was also a board-certified psychiatrist, and he was also head of psychiatry for one of the provinces in Canada. Now, this is a person with a lot under the hood. Dr. Hoffer reasoned that schizophrenia had symptoms that were very similar to those of pellagra. Pellagra is extreme or total niacin deficiency. Pellagrans also, in addition to skin and problems and many other things, have mental illness symptoms. When vitamin B3 or niacin was first added as an enrichment, as a fortification to flour, about half of the people in mental institutions went home. This is not a well-known fact. They were there not because they were mentally ill because of genetic or environment or social reasons, but because they were malnourished. He wondered about the half that didn't go home. What about the people that had a little bit of niacin and didn't get better? And like Linus Pauling would decades later, Dr. Hoffer thought that maybe they just need more. So he started giving what at the time were preposterously high doses of niacin, 3,000 milligrams a day, and he was curing schizophrenia in 80% of the cases.
Hi there, welcome back, viewers. In your own words, Felicity, explain to our viewers what is niacin.
Niacin is a vitamin B. It's B3 actually, and people who are feeling a little anxious and stressed out should really be taking a B complex with every meal that they have. So every time you take a juice or a meal, you swallow down a B complex.
What is a B complex?
Well, it's just a vitamin. The vitamin B complex is particularly good for the mind, and we've got all the different B vitamins. But as he has discovered, the B3 is particularly good. This niacin is particularly good for people who are stressed out and anxious. So I think it's a wonderful thing to do. It does have a slight flushing reflex in the body. So it's meant to sort of clean out your arteries and clean everything out, but it gives you this pink tinge to the skin, which lasts an hour or so. And so the first time I ordered some from Philip Day, you know, I always try everything that I recommend to people. Yeah. So although I'm not depressed, luckily, I tried my niacin, and being me, I thought, well, you know, I'll give it a power trials. So I took 2 when I was supposed to take 1. What a stupid thing to do, viewers. I was bright red all over and itching with this niacin. And so I had to get in my bath, a cold bath, to just lay there until I knew it would pass in about an hour's time. Yeah. But not a happy moment. So do it cautiously. You know, I would say to everyone, I know this thing works, it's really good. You can get a no-flush variety as well. And so the vitamin B is really important. And we've really, you know, with our processed diet, we've really eliminated these pure vitamin B things like the beans from our diet. So we need to come back to those. But he's talking about people who've really got a problem, so they need to supplement. Remember, the soil has got so deficient, so the vegetables and the fruit that are growing in the soil are actually deficient of the right vitamins and minerals as well. So whereas our grandparents got away with eating, you know, the fresh stuff, and it was really beautifully nourished from the ground, so the plant itself was well nourished. So when we ate it, we were well nourished.
Now
And now it's deficient.
talk about niacin. Are there any side effects to niacin?
No. Andrew Saul has looked at all this. He's been working on it for years, and no, there's not a side effect from it, apart from feeling much more cheerful, feeling well balanced again, which is a joy to people, a real joy.
Now, in the clip that we've just seen with Dr. Andrew Saul, he mentioned about the vitamin safety. What is that?
Well, you have to obviously keep to certain limits. For instance, with vitamin C, if you have too much vitamin C, do you know what happens? You excrete it out of the body. Mm-hmm. So we also only make vitamin C for about 3 or 4 hours in the body. And so that's why when we take our vitamin C, we should take it through the day, okay? If you take it all in the morning, by 4 hours later, it's not working anymore. So they do RDAs, which is the recommended daily dose. Most of them are far too weak. And if you're eating the right fresh fruit and vegetables, you're doing your green juices, and you're taking a basic supplement, you're going to feel so much better.
Now, we always talk about how our mental state can influence our body, and it can bring on any diseases in our bodies as well. They also mentioned about the placebo effect. Just explain to our viewers about that, please.
Well, the placebo is the effect that if I tell you that I'm giving you this pill and it's going to work for you, maybe it will work for you, although it might just be a sugar pill. And a lot of medicine is actually done that way, because we have to really do a double-blind study so that the physician doesn't know if he's giving the right pill or not, because he is also giving messages out, maybe quite unconsciously, as he hands it out to the patient. The patient is also knows either that it's going to work or it's not going to work. So you have to have a double-blind study where neither the doctor nor the patient knows if this is actually the potent pill, and the other half have the, you do a random study where half the people are getting the real thing and half the people are just getting a placebo. You can also have a nocebo, which is going to have another side effect, which are not a good effect. So the placebo is meant to be a good effect, and the nocebo is a bad effect. And it's really interesting when people are even told that they're having chemotherapy, they can vomit and be really ill and lose their hair, and they haven't actually had the chemo, but they've been told it's going to be the chemo. So the mind is hugely important in what happens with the body. It's what we believe. So when we believe in God, when we have our faith, you think how that gets us through really awkward times in life, because mentally we're armed with the armor of God, which is in Ephesians 6, which I absolutely love, the breastplate of righteousness and the shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit. So we are armed, and we need to be armed in this 21st century lifestyle.
And talk about patients who have depression or schizophrenia. Now, it was mentioned in the clip that some patients are malnourished. What about the importance of them eating the right foods? How much can that affect them?
Well, of course it does affect them, and they've done studies to show that the patients with the worst nutrition are the elderly who are in hospital, because if you look at the hospital food, it's not the right natural food that we should be eating. So when elderly people are at home, they're usually having better food than they have in hospital, because you're getting white bread, you're getting jelly, you're getting all kinds of rubbish given to you in the hospital. And in some of the Eastern European countries, the first thing they do is detox the patient and get them on a living food diet. That's really interesting. I had a Czechoslovakian girl on one of my courses who said this is the first thing we do when people come into hospital in Czechoslovakia. They actually get them down to natural foods.
Now, we talk about panic attacks, as we started the show with. How much does that affect, when we're eating the right foods, how much does it affect our mind to be in a peaceful state? and therefore does that lead on to us not becoming so in a panic situation?
Well, you can still lose the keys to the car or the keys to the flat, which will give you a panic attack. But of course, if you've built up your immune system, you're less likely to really get into a bad attack. You know, you have to calmly think about it and who we can ring, and you know, we have to, you've got to keep the logical mindset so that you don't blow your top.
I think that's the key to this. Panic attacks is something that we can all have a panic attack, but it's how do we deal with that when it comes, and it's having that just a relaxed sense of mind to realise, okay, I've lost the keys, or I've lost my passport. Obviously it's a worry, I'm going to miss my flight, but it's to keep that mental state as straight as possible for you to be able to think and find the solution.
That's right, because we can usually think our way out of it if you just keep a cool head, as they say. Very important.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is talking further about niacin, depression and schizophrenia.
This is astonishing. The cure for schizophrenia with drug therapy is not particularly good. Dr. Hoffer saw again and again that niacin worked, so then he studied it, did the placebo-controlled double-blind tests, and started writing paper after paper on this. At that point, the American Psychiatric Association literally blacklisted him. Since Dr. Hoffer founded the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine in 1968, there have been a very large number of studies that have confirmed niacin not only for treating schizophrenia, but also attention deficit disorder, psychoses in general, anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. In addition to this, Dr. Hoffer's work early in the 50s showed as a side effect, I think side benefit might be a better phrase, that niacin lowered cholesterol. That is, it lowered the bad cholesterol and actually raised HDL and dramatically lowered triglycerides. This work was picked up by Dr. William Parsons, Jr. at the Mayo Clinic. Dr. Parsons, America's #1 niacin researcher, wrote a book on this a few years ago. Parsons mentioned that Hoffer was right and then expanded it into a protocol that many physicians use to this day. Niacin is so good for lowering cholesterol and preventing heart disease that the New York Times quoted the president of the American College of Cardiology saying, "Niacin is really it. Nothing else comes close." Bill W. concluded that niacin helps about 2/3 of alcoholics using it and wrote 2 papers which he circulated on his own, at his own expense, to physicians and the membership of AA. In addition to this, another friend of Abram Hoffer's was William Kaufman. Dr. William Kaufman, back in the very late 1930s, was using niacin in a no-flush form, niacinamide, to treat common arthritis. And Dr. Kaufman found that 250 milligrams of niacinamide 6 to 10 times a day improved range of motion and improved joint function in people who had arthritis so bad that they couldn't bend their arm.
Hi there, viewers, and welcome back. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, why do people get that?
Well, it's just a quirk of the brain that comes from anxiety, and so people have to count the stairs up to bed, you know, and go up and down and think, have I got it right? And they have to go and do it again, or they have to wash their hands. It's just an anxiety thing that people have got into a habit of doing, and it comes from worry. And so, you know, as Andrew Saul is saying, when we are armed, when we're better armed with the right nutrition, this will heal itself.
And that's where faith in God comes into it as well, isn't it? Because I can say from my personal experience, we all go through our own circumstances in our own lives, but when you have God in your life, it's like you've got a best friend next to you, and you can just kind of rely your life and think, okay, I'm going to pass this problem over to God and know that He's there, He's listening.
That's right, that's right. That's the only way that I think people can really get through. when people come on my courses, you know, they get Well, Stay Well course, and sometimes they're in quite an anxious state, and they've been ill for some time. And the mental detox is just as important, actually, as the physical detox. So they learn about the food, they learn about the colonics, they learn about the ionic foot baths. You know, we do all these things during the week with them. But by far the most important thing, really, is the mental detox. So when people come for a week, you know, you can see how stressed they are when they arrive, and when they go back, they are much more relaxed. So of course it's good to get away from what's stressing you as well. So if it's work or if it's difficult relationship at home, then getting away is a real break. And I think then you can look at the big picture much better. You can prioritize, how do I want to be in 5 years' time? You know, do I still want to be going through this problem, or do I want to resolve it now? And very often, if we sit down, I do this meditation called the blessing, and we go through all the things that have, you know, quietly, people do it silently, and I suggest the things that could have upset them, like grief, rejection, anger, jealousy, whatever it is, and give people time to acknowledge those thoughts in themselves and deal with them gently, hand them over to the Lord, and then look at their life from God's perspective. You know, they're on a journey here. What are they trying to achieve? And I think you get a much better overall picture of how you want to live your life. So it's not just a physical detox, it's a mental detox, it's a spiritual detox.
But just reiterate to our viewers how stress and worries, how much that can affect our physical status and how that can bring on diseases.
Well, it certainly fires the cortisol in the body and the adrenal glands. So our thyroid goes out of whack, our adrenals go out of whack, and the pituitary and the pineal gland, the whole, you know, this is called endocrinology. And it was interesting because I worked with one of the best endocrinologists in the world. And so interesting that when you come to prayer and meditation, the pineal gland, they've actually tested, becomes much bigger when people pray and meditate. And then people are in a much better place to cope with whatever we have to cope with.
Does niacin help to lower cholesterol?
Yes, apparently it does. And people really ought to go on Andrew Saul's website. And he's just done a marvelous teaching course that he's done online for people all over the world. And so I joined it as well, because I'm always interested in learning more. And it was amazing how people all over the world were able to learn about orthomolecular medicine, which is really looking after the body from a nutritional point of view. And he's appeared in several films, one of them with Philip Day, Food Matters, which is a really good film. They can get that on my website. And you know, it's just a new way of looking at things, Si, and really examining why people are stressed, why they're in such a state, and getting themselves into trouble, because you have to really do the mental detox and think your way out of it.
Let's talk about nutrition now. What are the foods that our viewers should be eating to help them with panic attacks, depressions? What are the key foods?
Well, basically we go back to the vegetables, and especially the high sulfur ones like the garlic, the onions, the leeks, you know. They're particularly good for the body. And getting rid of the processed food, the chemical foods, because there's a very famous neurosurgeon called Russell Blaylock who's written a book about the excitotoxins. And a lot of our problems, for instance, epilepsy and autism, a lot of these things are caused by the processed foods, by the excitotoxins, the MSG, which is very strong in the kind of commercial Chinese food we have. You know, I used to love going to a Chinese restaurant, the delicious taste, but the way they make everything so delicious is actually putting a lot of excitotoxins and aspartame and various chemicals into the food. Now, 70, even 60 years ago, they just didn't have those things, and people were much fitter. People didn't have the anxiety and the nervous complaints that they have now.
And how can people who are suffering from depression, suffering from panic attacks, exercise? How can that help them?
Well, exercise is wonderful because it's, for a start, you get out in the fresh air, you've got other things to think about, other things to look at, probably someone to meet. You know, you go out for a walk, say you're walking the dog or something, and, you know, you'll get a chat with people, and it just lifts the spirits.
Even team sports as well, isn't it? Because it's a social aspect. It's getting you out there, communicating with other people. You're in the fresh air, you're active.
Team sports are wonderful, absolutely brilliant. I played team sports, you know, most of my life, and it's great fun, and you don't have to be particularly good at it. You just have to be part of the team. You've got to be a good, what they call, team player. So you encourage everybody else, and you do your best, and that's the very best that you can do. You know,
Okay.
my father was an Olympic athlete, and so I was obviously expected to be a really good runner, and I couldn't run for toffee. I'm like my mother. Couldn't run to keep warm. And Dad would turn up, you know, for the sports days with his Olympic hat band on, his Olympic tie, to watch me coming in last in the running race. It was awful. But he was so sweet, and he used to put his arm around me and say, "Darling, you did your best."
Oh.
Thank God for that.
I think at the end of the day, when we do talk about exercise, it's not the case of just getting the shoes on and going for a run. I mean, there are people who are not obviously able to do something like that at the beginning. It's just the small, they can do small, easy exercises to start off with, can't they?
Absolutely. The rebounding and the walking and the dancing, of course. The dancing is huge fun.
Make it fun.
You just turn some music on in the house and dance, and that is such good exercise. It's great.
Okay, well, let's continue with our next clip. This is talking about niacin and ADHD.
Also the case with ADHD kids. I knew a neighbor who had a boy who was really, really in trouble. Constantly in trouble at school, constantly in trouble at home. He was violent. This is real serious. This is more than ADHD. I'm calling it ADHD because that's what the boy's doctors called it. But the fact is, it was far beyond that. Nevertheless, they gave him one of the usual drugs for attention deficit disorder, and it made him worse, so now he was even more violent and even more psychotic. The parents were in a state, as you can imagine. Kid's only 13. Everything's falling apart at home. They learned about Dr. Hoffer's niacin approach, and because it was a child, they figured, well, we'll start him at a lower level. They gave him 1,500 milligrams a day of niacinamide. Now, niacinamide and niacin have the same psychiatric benefits. They both work. The difference is niacin will cause a flush in almost everyone who takes it in quantity, especially for the first couple of weeks. Niacinamide is the type of niacin used in almost every multivitamin preparation because the manufacturers don't want people bringing the product back to the store they bought it saying, "This made my skin hot." Niacinamide works as well as niacin for mental illness. So the boy, who wasn't about to tolerate the flush, started taking 1,500 milligrams a day of niacinamide. The parents noticed an immediate improvement. Within days, the child was less angry. He was less trouble at school. He was less oppositional. He was less violent. They immediately figured that if a little helped, maybe more would help more, and they wouldn't know unless they tried, and they had no other options. Again, medication was making him worse, not better. So they took him totally off his medication, and they increased his niacin to ultimately about 5,000 milligrams a day. They even got the boy's psychiatrist to prescribe niacin so he could take it at school. There's yet another form of niacin called inositol hexaniacinate. This is the most popular no-flush niacin. Inositol hexaniacinate works almost as well as niacin or niacinamide. It has the advantage of not causing a flush except with very rare exceptions. It's only slightly more expensive than niacin or niacinamide, which are both very cheap. And inositol hexaniacinate will still help with cholesterol, whereas niacinamide will not. But again, all three of them have psychiatric benefits. Dr. Hoffer said that drug therapy alone has a cure rate of 10%. He added to that, drugs make a well person sick. How can drugs make a sick person well?
Yeah.
He saw this over and over and over and over again.
Hi there, welcome back. I just want to reiterate what was said at the end of that clip there. Drugs make a well person sick. How can drugs make a sick person well?
Yeah, interesting. It's better to build up the body if we can, obviously, with the natural things. You know, an apple and an orange have got exactly the right enzymes in them to digest that. And also they make us feel really good. For instance, we've got the seeds in the apple, which have got the natural hydrocyanic acid, which is an anti-cancer prevention. You know, God has put the most amazing components in the fruits and the vegetables we've got. So really, the food is our best medicine, as Hippocrates said.
Now, we talk about juicing, we talk about fruits and vegetables. What are the best fruits and vegetables for us to be juicing?
Well, basically, the green juice, you cannot beat the green juice. And we're going to be doing a program on juicing entirely in the next couple of weeks. But it's really interesting. All around the world, and I've got people from all over the world who are doing different juices from their particular part of the world. And the great thing is it's the chlorophyll, it's the green chlorophyll. So although we do have the other juices, we have the beetroot and we have the yellow juices and the red juices, but it's the green that really heals our blood. And you know, it's our blood that's so important, whether our blood is acid or alkaline. The hemoglobin in our blood is very similar to the chlorophyll in the plants. So we all know that when we get on the green juices, and you can make them nice, you can do them with cucumber, which is the softest and easiest, most high water content green juice. So you put a little bit of wheatgrass in with that, maybe you put an apple in with it. That's what I had this morning.
What sorts of quantities are we talking here? Is it just one apple?
Well, if you're doing it, I try to do a fresh juice every time, because most of the time I'm working at home and I'm on my computer. So I just go every couple of hours and I make myself a new green juice. So I'll use a whole cucumber, a whole apple, probably a teaspoon of wheatgrass. And then if I've got other things like kale and broccoli and any green vegetables really, I'll just toss them in as well. But it makes a wonderful bright green color. Now, if you were going to put carrots in with that, you've got a brown color, so it looks like a coffee, in fact. But I prefer to have mine with beautiful colors because they attract me. So I have the green juice, and then I'll have perhaps a beetroot juice, a tomato juice. That's lovely. And the fresh tomato juice, especially if you've grown them in the garden, you know, that tastes so beautiful and quite unlike any tomato juice that we've had that's commercial.
What are, just explain to our viewers, what are the differences between juicing and blending?
Well, with the juicing, we extract the pure essence of the juice in a liquid form, and the pulp goes onto the side, and that is either made into veggie burgers, or we can just use the pulp. We can feed the animals with it. You can use it to make the compost for the garden. I think people really juice when people are not well, when they need something very easy to digest. So having had pancreatic cancer, in fact, I do prefer to have the very fine juice. On the other hand, you can blend, and then you've got the fiber in as well. So it's more of a meal. And I think the guys probably go for that more. The guys want something more substantial, and the girls probably go for the juices. But either way, they are very good, and it's natural vegetables and a little bit of fruit.
Now that we all live a very busy life, juicing is something that you can do in the morning or perhaps the night before, would you say?
No, I don't like it the night before. I think that it's the juice has lost its goodness overnight in the fridge. So I just make it all fresh. I keep very little in the fridge. I come down and buy my vegetables and really juice them. Don't keep anything more than a day or two.
Okay, very interesting. Let's take a look at our next clip. This is talking about niacin, the most amazing vitamin you've never heard of.
Dr. Abram Hoffer took large doses of niacin for 57 years and lived to be 92 years old. He took the niacin from 1952 till May of 2009 when he died. And I'm going to play an audio clip of him talking about this in 2005. In the audio clip, he also talks about a woman in Canada who was 111 years old, still alive, obviously, and who had been taking niacin for 41 years. He also notes that 2 years prior to that, so when she was 109, she was cross-country skiing, and she attributed her longevity to niacin. Linus Pauling, who was a Nobel Prize-winning chemist, and he also befriended Abram Hoffer, and he was the one who started orthomolecular medicine, started out as orthomolecular psychiatry, that is using substances which are naturally present in the body to treat and cure disease, which would include vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids. But he also took large doses of niacin as well as large doses of vitamin C and other things, and lived to be 93 years old. Hi, this is Larry Hobbs at fatnews.com. A little more about Dr. Hoffer. He is the person who discovered that niacin raises HDL levels. He also noted, and I will find the audio clips where he talks about this, but niacin is not just a cholesterol-lowering agent, but rather it normalizes cholesterol levels. That is, niacin lowers cholesterol when it is high and raises cholesterol when it is low. To me, this is really important because, for example, with the statins, the cholesterol drugs known as statins like Lipitor, yes, they lower LDL cholesterol, but they do this by interfering with natural processes in the body. All they do is lower it. To me, it's the same thing with the blood pressure medicines. They interfere with natural processes in the body. That's why there are all kinds of problems with these drugs. But niacin does not do this. It normalizes cholesterol levels. So it's basically making the body more efficient and to allow it to do exactly what it wants to do. Dr. Hoffer is also the one who discovered that niacin, along with other nutrients and other changes, can cure schizophrenia in many cases. And I've already posted one video on this. I will post some more. But this is stuff that I think the overwhelming majority of the population and the overwhelming majority of psychiatrists and doctors are simply not aware of. He discovered this more than 50 years ago. I just became aware of it a couple years ago. So, fascinating stuff. And a little more about Linus Pauling. He is the only person, he was a Nobel Prize winning chemist, and he's the only person to win 2 Nobel Prizes by himself. So in other words, he is a brilliant guy. If you ever look up his stuff on vitamin C, you would be stunned on how deeply he went into the chemistry of this. One other thing which I will look up and post is that he made a prediction, and Dr. Hoffer talked about this, quoting him, but he said that he believed that psychiatry, the drug companies, would attempt to monopolize psychiatry, but ultimately it would fail and it would result in great economic upheaval. And so I will find that clip where Dr. Hoffer is quoting Linus Pauling about this. Just fascinating stuff to think about. And I posted other videos from Joan Matthews Larson talking about that the American Psychiatric Association really is owned by the drug companies. There used to be a couple dozen psychiatric conditions, and then they increased it. There are now a couple hundred, simply so the drug companies can sell more drugs. So I will.
Hi there, viewers, and welcome back. Why is it someone on niacin can last for so many years, like the example of that lady who lasted till 111 years old?
Well, obviously they're well balanced mentally, so they don't get stressed out, so they don't wear their heart out, they don't wear their liver out, and they are really the way we ought to live. That's the way we ought to live. If we were taking the right things, if we were doing our vitamin C and our B and our niacin, then and eating the right foods, we could also, live to a long age. My parents lived to their 90s, and they lived a very healthy life. And my father had been an athlete. They really stayed slim, and they stayed fit until their 90s. They were playing golf. They were, active and mentally very active. So I think it does depend on the lifestyle as to whether you burn yourself out young or you're able to go on to a very fruitful old age.
What advice would you give to, and we might have some viewers out there who are watching today's program, they've never maybe seen our program before, and perhaps they're overweight and they're watching us today and they're saying, do you know what, I really want to change my life and I want to live longer just like that lady at 111 years old. What is a good starting point for her?
Well, you see, the weight is toxicity, and it's heavy on the body. You're carrying around you're carrying around excess baggage, as they say on the airlines, you know, maybe a whole suitcase of excess baggage. And so when you lose the weight, obviously it's so much easier for the heart to work, for all the vital organs to work. Your breathing immediately gets better. And so the best thing we can do is go back to the Genesis diet, which I discovered, and you know, it's right there in the Bible, Genesis 1:29 and 30. A lot of people have missed it and they've glossed over it. But when I was really ill 11 years ago, I was told to come back to that diet, which I did. And the raw living foods are even better for us than when we're cooking them slightly, because cooking actually causes leukocytosis in the body. And that's the rush of the white blood cells to fight the invader. So we get inflammation in the body. So when we're sort of 51% or 80% maybe raw, and then we cook a little bit of rice as well, and maybe a baked potato, but basically that's all I have that's cooked. And I will cook a few vegetables, but basically I can live on my juices. I feel really good on my juices.
Now, during that clip we've just seen, they mentioned about statins. What are statins?
Well, a lot of people are put on statins for high cholesterol, and they've now discovered that they do have an awful lot of side effects. And I don't want to frighten anyone who's out there who's on statins. Just go and check them out with your doctor and do a little research on them as well, because maybe you've done more research than your doctor. And, you know, get on Andrew Saul's website, and he actually has a blog. One can talk to Andrew Saul, and he is very knowledgeable. He's absolutely the person to go to. So, written lots of books. You can read his books as well. But you know, the fact remains that people like Linus Pauling, who won the Nobel Peace Prize twice, you know, he was a brilliant mind, just like Dr. Max Gerson, brilliant minds. And we can go back to looking at what they were teaching quite some years ago, and it's still true. And perhaps we've got diverted a little bit into the pharmaceuticals, far too many drugs, and really relying on the quick fix rather than addressing the cause of the disease in the first place, and building up the immune system, because it's all about the immune system.
Just reiterate to our viewers how niacin can help to cure schizophrenia.
Well, it just rebalances the brain. We have to have a balanced brain. You know, the brain can be easily thrown off course with a lot of stress, and with the excitotoxins that Dr. Russell Blaylock talks about. So we have to really come back to the Get Well, Stay Well diet, which I think is wonderful. It's God's diet in Genesis 1:29 and 30. And the testimony is that I have 9,000 people who are, you know, in contact with me on the calls, and people are saying how well they are and how they've lost weight, how their heart is better, you know, their lungs are better, their breathing's better, they're feeling much lighter in mood, they're taking some exercise maybe for the first time in years, they're feeling brighter, they're feeling happier. And so for me, it's the results that count. And when people are getting well on something, I rejoice, because that's how I got well myself.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is by David Permulator, and he's talking about the best diet.
Number one, adopt a very low carbohydrate and high fat, you heard me correctly, a high fat diet. The brain is desperate for good fats, olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut oil, and determine whether or not that individual is gluten sensitive by performing some blood work that actually looks at that. And you know, for years people said, well, for example, don't eat nuts. Why would you eat nuts? They're so high in fat. And I would tell you that this didn't make it into the book Grain Brain because it was published this week. I actually read this study last night in the New England Journal of Medicine, showing us that those individuals who have a lot of nut consumption have a 20% reduced risk of becoming a dead person each year. So nuts are full of fat. Fat is desperately important for your immune function, for your heart function, and for your brain function. So that individual Again, I'm not his doctor, that's the disclaimer, but we would be really super aggressive, recognizing that blood sugar dramatically correlates to the rate of progression of dementia and the rate of decline in a Parkinson's patient.
Wow. And she says, look, we eat sardines almost daily, grass-fed beef, rice or almond milk, coconut milk, ricotta, eggs, almond butter, ghee, red and sweet potatoes, fruit, avocado, coconut cream smoothies on a regular basis, but he continues to lose weight. How do we help him gain weight?
Right,
we'll answer this, and we'll dive into some of the other questions.
Add more supplemental fat. I would consider performing a blood test called A1C, hemoglobin A1C. Diabetic listeners are quite familiar with what that means. Basically, it's an average blood sugar, but it's also a marker of a process where sugar binds to protein, and that leads to increased inflammation and free radicals. So you want to adjust the dietary carbohydrates lower in order to lower the hemoglobin A1C. It's a standard blood test that any doctor can order. And that said, add in more fat. Nut butters are really high in good calories, like almond butter. Remember that peanut butter is not a nut butter because peanuts are not a nut. And many peanut butters are really popular in the grocery store shelves because they add sugar. Who knew? But again, add more fat calories.
Now, one of the things we wanted to cover today is this idea of being gluten-free. I have some close friends who are gluten-free because they had all sorts of intestinal issues. They finally went that way and it transformed their life. But so many other people are going the gluten-free route, and they don't have any sort of outward intestinal issues, and they just think that it's right for their life. Why are they doing that? Why are these other people who aren't feeling it and having that effect doing it? What sort of
they're doing it because they are seeing those benefits, and those benefits are reinforcing. There was a big colloquium that was held in 2011 in England where they brought the top gluten researchers from around the world to finally settle this issue and come up with some understanding about, well, we know that there's celiac disease, an autoimmune problem that may affect 1% to 2% of humanity. There is also non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which may affect up to 30% of individuals. And what is so important to understand is that oftentimes gluten sensitivity manifests itself without any intestinal issues whatsoever. So many doctors will say, oh, you can eat all the gluten you want. I mean, you're not having a diarrhea and an upset stomach. Why worry about it? Obviously, you're not gluten sensitive. That's old school, and it's basically wrong information. Gluten sensitivity can be found in people with perfectly fine gastrointestinal function, but who are cognitively impaired or who are depressed, or kids who have developed something called ADHD, which is affecting 6.5 million American children right now. And, you know, the standard approach in America is to give 2/3 of that 6.5 million kids powerful brain-stimulating medication, amphetamines basically, the long-term consequences of which have never been studied. You know, Clayton, 85% of the ADHD drugs made on planet Earth are used right here in America. I mean, are we ahead of the rest of the world? I would suspect we should reconsider that.
Hi there, viewers, and welcome back. Very interesting. At the beginning of that clip, they said you need low-carb diet, but you need a high-fat diet. Now, when we think of fat, we think we need to reduce our fat.
You thinking chips?
I am.
No, you should not be thinking chips.
So more chips, more burgers. Is that right, Felicity?
Coconut oil. Beautiful coconut oil. That's the good fats.
Just explain to our viewers about there are good fats and there are bad fats.
Certainly there are, and it's the bad fats that have been marketed so much to us. You know, the new fats that came out, the trans fats, in the last 20, 30 years, we now know that they are really bad. They're one molecule away from plastic, so they are very destructive in the body. So you're better with the real butter, the real olive oil, the natural things. Let's go back to nature every time. And for the nuts, we've got the ABC of nuts. Do you know what that is?
Go for it.
Almonds, Brazils, and cashews. And I love them all. I think they're absolutely great. And you can have them fresh, or you can actually soak them to soak off the skins, the aflatoxins, which are sometimes a little indigestible to people. And then you can soak them overnight and then dehydrate them in the dehydrator, and they are absolutely scrumptious. So I always keep those in the car, and if I need a little nibble while I'm out or driving a long way, at least I'm not going to stop and have a sandwich somewhere, you know.
Just helps you get to the next meal, doesn't it? Now, we've talked about losing weight. What about gaining weight? Some of our viewers might have...
Well, if you're very anxious and you're stressed out, of course you do burn off more with your metabolism. So then we have to really come back into balance with the body and start eating, but the right things, not eating, as you say, the hamburgers and the chips, but having the good nutrition in the body. So the vegetables again, the baked potato in its jacket, the rice. You think half the world is living on rice, basically. And the brown rice is really delicious. And I like to do that with lots of garlic and onions and beautiful herbs. You can do the cumin and the curcumin and the turmeric. You know, lovely curries, which I adore.
Someone that's gaining weight, are they better on a white rice or a brown rice?
You're better with the brown rice, because the white rice is just refined. And this is the thing that, you know, we've refined all our food so much, like the white bread that's really like cardboard, turns to sugar immediately in the body. And so we need to go back to the real thing, as they say. And it's not a drink in a red can, the real thing. The real thing is what God has actually provided for us, the beautiful fruits and vegetables. You know, the fruits here, the figs are just out of this world at the moment.
They're literally just growing from the trees.
Beautiful, and the avocados here as well. We're so, so blessed.
Let's talk about coconut oil, because coconut oil has it's a multi-purpose, isn't it?
Well, it's wonderful, and people have had amazing results with Alzheimer's, because we're talking about mental things today, and the Alzheimer's results have been phenomenal with the coconut oil, and it's wonderful on the skin. It's a wonderful thing because it's antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It takes pain out of a tooth, you know, if you've got toothache. I had a lady the other day ring me up and she said, you know, I had this abscess in my tooth. The dentist was actually going to remove the tooth the next week. And she did the oil pulling. We've talked about the oil pulling.
What is the oil pulling for our viewers?
She's swooshing the oil around in her mouth for 15 minutes. And she said by the time she went back to the dentist, he said, well, you've saved your tooth. How did you do it? And she said, coconut oil, and he was quite surprised. So there we are. You heard it here on Revelation TV, and it's an absolute tooth saver. It's wonderful.
And where can our viewers find the coconut oil?
Well, go to Sri Lanka. How about that? No, you can get it in the health food shops, and it's such a lovely thing. Wonderful for the skin as well, and soothing. Takes the pain out of joints. You know, you can use it topically. You can swallow it, and it's a terrific thing. Yeah.
Well, we're just coming towards the end of today's programme. I'd just like to summarise for people, so any of our viewers who are looking for advice on depression and panic attacks, what nutrition advice can you give to them?
Well, go back to the Genesis diet, because that will completely balance the body again. And as we always say, if you're on all kinds of drugs, then you must go and talk to your medical practitioner, maybe a naturopath who understands a lot about nutrition, but go and really come off these things very gently, under supervision, under care, so that you don't have any bad reactions. And the body will always respond, the immune system will respond. And as we've seen today, Dr. Andrew Saul, Dr. Linus Pauling, Abraham Hoffer have all done a tremendous amount of research on niacin, niacinamide, and you can get the no-flush variety, so you don't have to go through what I went through.
Okay, great. Felicity, we have come towards the end of today's programme, so thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Great.
Thank you also to our viewers for joining us today. We have played a number of clips and we've covered a number of pieces of information, so do remember Revelation TV has a catch-up service on our website. It's on www.revelationtv.com. We're on Twitter, it's twitter.com/revelationtv. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/RTV Europe. So thank you so much for joining us. Eat well, stay healthy and exercise. Have a good lifestyle. Look forward to seeing you same time next time on Revelation. God bless and bye.